the fundamental dynamic in human life and the most important factor in the development and existence of human beings is attachment, connection to another human being. I mean, the capacity to be present with and understand and see the other human being for exactly who they are, and to accept them for who they are, and to invite them unconditionally to be in your presence exactly the way they are. That's what love actually is. But what if you grew up in a home where your father or your mother was a rageaholic, and so that you're terrified of anger? You can't handle it. It brings up too much anxiety for you. What I found out is that whether it was physical illness or addiction or mental illness of any kind, or the preponderance of childhood developmental disorders that are burgeoning in North America right now, with millions of children being on stimulant medications for ADHD, 500,000 kids in your country are on antipsychotic medications, not because they're psychotic, but because we don't know. When I say we, I mean doctors, teachers, parents don't know how to regulate the child's behavior without medications. And it's an experiment because we have no idea what the long-term effects of antipsychotics will be on the developing brain of the child. The approach always is, somebody gets rheumatoid arthritis, well, what do we do about it? Well, we give them steroid medications, or we give them immune suppressant medications, because in rheumatoid arthritis, the immune system attacks the body. So we want to suppress the immune system so it stops attacking the body of the host. With ADHD, what do we do about it? Well, there's something going on in the brain. Let's change the chemistry of the brain by stimulant medications, which can make a helpful difference, actually. But our response to any of these issues, whether it's physical, mental illness, childhood developmental problems, behavior issues, is always reactive. It's always reactive, like we're reacting to manifestations. So there was a case somewhere in the States, not unusual, by the way, where a kid somewhere in the States, 8 or 9-year-old or 10-year-old, is in handcuffs by the school security officer. The same thing is happening up in Canada. We're just reacting to the behavior. And with due deference to BK, when he said, well, trauma is wrong, let's talk about solutions. That's not my approach at all. And I'm saying, for God's sake, let's just look at it first. Get present to it. Be aware of it. See how it arises. And then, out of that understanding, will come the solutions. American psychiatrist Thomas Hora said, when you get the what, then you know the how. And in North America, we're very addicted to the how, but not to the what. We don't really understand things. We don't look deeply enough. We just react to symptoms, behaviors, manifestations that are troublesome, that we don't like, that are pathological. And there's not a look at the source. So here's what I found out. That whether we're looking at mental illness, depression, anxiety, PTSD, ALS, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, behavior problems, we're looking at one thing only, which is the impact of early childhood stress on the individual. And that stress happens in a social context. And so that the ideology of Western medicine, which separates the mind from the body, which doesn't understand that there are physical manifestations of lifelong emotional patterns and early stresses that the disease itself is an outcome of, and that therefore if the individual could change their relationship to their emotions and how they function in the world and how they take on stress automatically and what kind of relationships they're in and what kind of work they're doing and how they feel about themselves, that can actually significantly affect the course of the illness in a positive sense. In other words, if they get present to themselves. But these are the things that my profession despite a whole preponderance of evidence, absolutely ignores. It just doesn't compute. Let's say you have a 2-year-old and you're the parent of a 2-year-old and they get angry with you. Incidentally, if your 2-year-old doesn't get angry with you, you're not doing your job. Because she can't have that second cookie before dinner. And why should she not be upset? I mean, when you want something, you don't get it, you get frustrated, right? She gets frustrated, so But what if you grew up in a home where your father or mother was a rageaholic, and so that you're terrified of anger? You can't handle it. It brings up too much anxiety for you. So then you give the signal, overtly or covertly, that good little girls don't get angry. What the child gets is that little girls who get angry don't get loved. So then how does she adapt? She adapts by repressing her anger. That's the way she maintains the relationship with you. Because the fundamental dynamic in human life and the most important factor in the development and existence of human beings is attachment, connection to another human being. As infants, we're utterly helpless, and we're more helpless than any other creature, and stay that way longer than any other creature. So without that attachment relationship, we simply don't function, can't live. It's life essential. And throughout life, of course, we evolved as a species of attachment. By attachment meaning it's a gravitational force that pulls two bodies together, just like love is the common word for attachment, connection, where somebody's taking care of somebody else, somebody's holding somebody else, and somebody's being held. Now, gravitation itself is an attachment force. I'm talking about physical gravitation. It pulls two bodies together. And literally, it's gravitation that makes the world go around the sun, isn't it? So when they say love makes the world go around, it's true in the purest physical sense. Well, it's also true in the psychological realm. And by love here, I don't mean the emotion that a parent feels towards the child, because I take it for granted that all parents love their kids. And even hard as it is to fathom, but even the parents who abuse their kids love their kids. They just don't know how else to love them because they're acting out their own childhood programming. So by love here, in this case, I don't mean the emotion. I mean the capacity to be present with and understand and see the other human being for exactly who they are, and to accept them for who they are, and to invite them unconditionally to be in your presence exactly the way they are. That's what love actually is. And so I can tell you as a parent, I was completely incapable of giving that to my kids because I was still dealing with my own childhood stuff as an adult. When children don't receive that unconditional, what Carl Rogers called the unconditional positive regard, or the unconditional invitation to be in my presence exactly the way you are, then they have to adapt to that. Why do they have to adapt? Because they need the attachment relationship without which they can't survive. So without attachment, there's no survival. Therefore, we adapt. And if your child gets the message that she's not invited to be in your presence when she's angry, then she won't be angry. Not that the anger won't be there, but she'll repress it. It's not a conscious behavior, it's simply an automatic brain mechanism. Now, when you repress anger, you know what happens in the long term? You're repressing your immune system. Lots of studies have shown that. And the immune system can then fail to function, or it can actually turn against you in the form of autoimmune illness. That's in a nutshell the source of a lot of physical illnesses. Not the only source, but it's a major contributing factor that's utterly ignored in Western medicine, despite reams of evidence. So what I'm saying here is that when there's a loss emotionally, that translates into biology. So it's not that there's biology here and no emotions here. It's that the emotions and the biology are completely inseparable. And what happens on the emotional plane inevitably will have its manifestations on a biological plane. So what you lose emotionally translates into biological events in your body.